The Wastewater Support Committee meeting for Thursday, January 24th, 2019, 6 p.m. Any public comment? Since there's no one here. Approval of minutes?
Madam Chair, I'd like to propose that we accept the January 8th, 2019 minutes as written.
Second.
Approval?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I hate that word. Okay. Topics for discussion, the contact card.
Okay, just give me 1 second, you're racing through this. Okay. So we talked briefly about getting information, so we are, hopefully the project manager, when they come on board, would have more information to be able to communicate with the Phase 2 population. So, I have a package for you, and for the moment, disregard the blue one. So,
The scratch tickets?
take
in there?
an envelope,
That's the one I was going to focus
give me one for Chris.
It's a birthday.
Chris? Kim
You
Banks.
might, while you're up there, you might as well grab one of those. Oh, wait.
Yeah,
He's
Chris,
got
you
it,
want
he's
me?
all set. Oh. Okay. She's crunching in on my
What
time.
envelopes do we take? Wait a minute. We just get one blue one?
One blue
One blue,
one
one
and
envelope.
disregard it for the
And
moment.
disregard
And
it,
an
right.
envelope for me.
Sure. It's like,
Oops,
what's that guy, Carnahan?
That's right. Okay.
So
Thank you.
disregard the blue one, all right.
Right,
blue
for the
one's
moment, for the moment.
Can we open this?
Yes, so, all right, well, look, can I give an introduction? You
Okay.
guys are just, brutal. A couple of years ago, the water department sent out a postcard to all of the customers
cheating.
about whether or not they had irrigation, and got that back. So, I've been in touch with Dan, I've been in touch with a couple of printers. So this is a concept of what you would have. This envelope would be mailed to each of the 650, the outer envelope, and then they would open it up, and then they will get this little yellow thing telling them what's going on, which is basically for the public, saying that the wastewater committee would like some more information to facilitate communication. It gives our email, asks them to complete the card, and it gives a couple of phone contact numbers, which of course we would check with Dan and Megan to make sure that's how they wanted them worded, but that would be that. So then we get to the little postcard. So, I'll tell you that the difference between having this done on a 4x6 postcard and any other form of size is only about $100 for the Phase 2 area. So, to me, that's, it's always good to save money, but that's not a substantial amount. So, in theory, we could put it on, any kind of paper. We could even put it on something that was, like the size of a wedding invitation. It depends on how many questions you really want to get on the card. On the other hand, for the sample, I did keep it to the 4x6 and the 4x9, only because they would both fit in a number 10 envelope, which of course that does cut the price down, because if we do get into a custom designed envelope, then that does get pricier. So that's the background. Remember, we have not spoken to the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator about this yet. But the first question would be, if we decide to do this, what questions do we want on this card for the people? Now I'll mention, on the blue sheet is an example of a 4x9 format. So as you can see, there is a bit more room, so we could add, other questions if we wanted to, and it would still come back in, it would still go out in the number 10 envelope. It just would be $100 more in postage, so. So that's the background.
All right, I have a question. Surprise, surprise. Where it says here, receive information electronically, all right, Then it says receive wastewater project information by phone, all right? And then it says be added to the town's pre-recorded phone message system. It sounds like there's two different things there.
There are,
All
there
right.
absolutely are.
Right, so the one that is just receive information by phone, how is that different from the pre-recorded message?
Okay, so when Dan did it, he stuck to the pre-recorded messages, but I didn't want to do that because the robocall, what we call the robocalls, you know, I would think now, you never know in the future, but they might be used more for construction, detours, things like that. Whereas the actual phone number would be when the project manager or whoever wanted to pick up the phone and contact a certain house and say, you know, hello, John Doe. We have this situation going on. I notice you haven't turned in your location stub and the crew is moving on. You know, what can we do to help you out? So that would be very different from a robocall.
Okay, and that makes sense to me, but
Oh,
I'm not,
good.
I'm not sure that somebody's going to get that impression. Are they going to think that they can get, let's say they check off by cell, but not for robo. Are they going to think they're going to get town messages by simply, every time something comes up, somebody's going to pick up the phone and call them? And I'm afraid that's what would happen with
I
that.
mean, I can't solve everything, if that's
No,
what they
no,
think.
what I'm
that's,
saying is,
you know.
I don't think we should just say receive wastewater project information by phone.
What do you think we should say?
I think it should be the robo.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean one or the other?
I think it has to be the robo, or somebody in the town's gonna have to pick up the phone and call all 600 and some people.
I don't think so, but
Madam Chair?
I'll listen
Yes.
to.
I tend to agree with you, and the reason why is you're having a consistent message, whereas there could be some variable messages if you veer off. If you have a recording, you're always going to have the same message.
Madam Chairman, I was going to say, maybe information is, I was going to suggest changing that to notices, because this is specific.
Where?
In receive wastewater project information electronically or wastewater project information by phone, I was going to specifically name it as notices.
What are you gonna do when somebody hasn't identified their stub and you wanna call them and ask them, hi, John, you haven't done this, what can
Oh,
we
I
do
see, the
about
word,
this?
the verb receive is actually the problem. It's a bidirectional use of the phone number. Well, no, I mean, they're opting in, which legally is what they have to do for the robocalls. But it's the same phone number. Once
Not
they've opted in,
necessarily.
that's
Well,
true.
no, not
Well, I mean,
necessarily.
the same ones that they give permission to use.
I mean, one could be their Cape number and the other could be wherever their not Cape number, for instance.
Yeah.
So, but I do agree with the concept. There are times when you have to call 2 or 3 individual houses. Let's just say something was scheduled to happen at those houses and some event happens and they gotta change the schedule or,
Yeah.
you know, whatever. You gotta be able to contact those people.
If I can draw the town administrator into this conversation, if he wouldn't mind. I mean, I don't know if we really, why don't you come up, Chris? You'll be part of this eventually anyway. But, I mean, I don't know if we need their permission to pick up the phone on a single situation, to tell you the truth. I mean,
I don't know, what do you mean by
well,
need
this
their
all
permission?
came out of people saying that,
The robocall, you need to get their permission. Now, I think that was the topic.
well, that was one of the topics. My topic was that people felt that we needed their permission to send them things and to call them. I mean, that's a little further than I go in life, but
Yeah, the only thing on the robocalling, as I understand it, I don't think it's changed from when, I was more involved in these. But robocalling, that if you are in the phone book, so you have a landline, then you're automatically into the system. So anyone that has a landline is automatically in the system as a result of public information. And the phone companies do not do that same courtesy for a cell phone or a smartphone.
does Comcast have a phone book?
They have phone numbers.
Do they have phone numbers? But anything in the public domain, so
they
a
don't
lot
make
of
them
times, like the
available.
water department, in order to populate the phone directory, will ask people to voluntarily submit their phone number if you want to be on a call list. So you generally don't get as wide a circulation on those robocalls as one would think, unless people proactively call us and say, I want to be on your list.
Or you go online and sign up.
Or you can go
for it,
online,
right.
yeah, we have those options. But it's not as universal as just having it out of the phone book.
You know, but I always think of Chris Harlow, and he used to talk about the fact that we have 5 or 6 different audiences. You know, and with any single method of communication, you don't expect to get 100%. You know, you can only get a smattering of, people who use email. A lot of people don't even use email anymore. You know, people use email, people use phone. So, I mean, personally, I'm not going for 100% on anything.
Right.
Well, I think it is, though, I mean, what Dan is going for is a phone number of record that is volunteered during construction, which I would think most people would want to, and the other reality is updating it. I mean, the number of people I know who have changed their phone numbers in the last year when they got rid of a landline.
So you're talking about robocalls.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about Dan being able to reach anybody, whether it's robocall or otherwise.
Okay.
I mean, you can volunteer your phone number to the water department just as I'd like to be contacted, robocall or not.
That probably is a good suggestion, because if we already have the database, and encourage people on the wastewater side, because as we get into water billing, water and sewer billing,
Right.
and being able to contact
Right.
people is gonna be important.
That's right.
And
Right,
maybe
now
do
what
it under the
happens?
general auspices of that.
What happens? So let's say they don't sign up for the robo. They sign up for email and the phone,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody doesn't call them and tell them something's happened. In other words, what I'm saying is we've got 600 and some people.
I
Is
mean, I don't-
somebody in the water department gonna call all 600 and some people and say, da-da-da-da-da, this is what's
See,
happening?
I'm thinking about this as very different situations. To me, the robocalls would be used like in construction, or for a street, or for a detour, whereas the phone, per se, somebody picking it up, would be for a very specific thing, like, your inspection, there's a problem with your inspection, or there's, it wouldn't be calling
Then-
650 people.
Then I think that word information should change, because the
Whatever
way
you
I
guys
read that,
like.
to me, that implies the town is providing information to you, that you're gonna be calling and providing information. So,
That's
so you wanna say,
Notices.
no, because that's the same thing. Yes, it is. Are they going to assume?
That's what a robocall is it's an outbound
No,
call.
I'm not talking about the robo.
Change that word to
Oh.
communication, that's all.
Um,
Wastewater communication electronically, I mean, we wanna talk to you, we wanna send you an email, we wanna robocall you, how do we do it?
It's surprisingly hard to get, we tried to get the phone numbers of everybody in my neighborhood. It was a ridiculously difficult
Well,
task.
you won't get them all, and so what you need to do is you have to
Couldn't
at
find
least,
them.
by mailing this to people,
Right.
you have to at least give
Yeah.
them the opportunity to say, okay, I do wanna have you contact me, or if they don't fill it out, we can't make them fill it out.
Right.
Right.
I mean, so, for most people, it should be an opportunity to, to be on the list, if you will. And I would assume this information ends up going into the database of those 650 homes and addresses and status of this and that. And you're gonna have this, some kind of a call that says you're a robocall or not, and boom, you can tell who's the robocall and who isn't. And so if
Yeah.
20 people
Yeah.
decide they're not, and you have to get to them, okay, what's their alternate?
This
Is
would
it
get-
email? Is it,
Yeah.
is it a hard, phone call?
You know
do
what, maybe a place to start, I hadn't really thought about this, but Dan already, in the water department,
He has.
already has a listing.
Yeah, we've
And I
seen it.
wonder how many, I mean, I know there's like 50 properties that are vacant, so we may not have a listing for
No,
those properties.
I've seen the
but-
databases, Chris, and we need, a more blanket. Dan's part of this project,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I was just curious though, at how many, because I know we have probably 98% of the people that are in town are on town water. So we have some mechanism to get a hold of people if there's a problem with their water meter. That he has to have some ability to get a hold of them other than, when all else fails, you send a first-class mail, and that
The nice
constitutes
thing about
notice.
this is, and having it come from wastewater, is that we're, saying to people, hey, wastewater is important, we need to contact you for wastewater. So, just get out there and get in front of them.
And other people were concerned, Chris, so you'll know, it was at a meeting previously that we didn't have permission to use those numbers. So this was addressing the permission issue that came up. In other words, if I know somebody's
Yeah, no,
number,
I'm with
there
you.
were people that were concerned about, well, I don't think you should use that, so. I mean, I worked
If
for,
it's in
I
the
ran a
law.
utility company, and I would have called anybody, anytime about anything. When you run a utility company, you don't think twice, but other people had different views.
Well, I
if
think,
you've got a
But we are a
private number,
utility, in this case, we are a utility company for purposes of
Right.
sewer, so.
yeah, and under telco rules, I think there's also a formal telco rule on robocalls, so that's where Dan is coming from, I think.
Stupid question.
Well, I wasn't talking about robocalls in that.
I'm just-
I'll say robocalls if I am.
Stupid question. I assume most people have caller ID. Is it gonna come up Town of Harwich?
No.
Is it gonna come up, what's it gonna come up?
That's a great question. I know we actually just recently did it down at the Council on Aging, and if you go through Robo Company, then it says 1-800-ROBO, just to use an example. But you can actually ask them to change that, so it says Council on Aging, Harwich Water. So we do have that ability to put on there on the caller ID that it's us, it's the
I
town.
would recommend that, because
Yes.
I can tell you, I don't wanna answer that phone if I see a 1-800 something or another, I'm going to
Yeah.
ignore it.
But that option is available.
and we-
Nine times out of 10, you're gonna get a recording anyhow.
Right.
I mean,
That's what happens.
that's what's gonna happen.
I don't think, especially with many older homes, I don't think you can count on them having caller ID. If they have a landline and a traditional phone, a lot of them don't. None of my phones have caller ID. I bought a separate one, but none of my phones actually have it.
Well, since you're just, if you don't mind, just seeing this, what do you think about the concept?
Are we trying to get people to have contact information so we can provide them more directly with information from your
Yes.
committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no,
Well,
from,
think about
from the
during
project
the
manager.
construction phase. Think about during the construction
Yeah.
phase.
Right.
Cemetery Road.
Yep.
Next week, you're gonna open it up for the first time, or start to dig it. So you send to those people in that affected street, hey, by the way, we just wanna let you know, starting Monday at 8 AM or something, your street's gonna be impacted, the sewer's coming, whatever, however you wanna say it. And, sorry for the inconvenience, but we gotta put the sewer in, and then they know.
I think from an operations standpoint, and actually Val has probably some experience with this, that, the CDM will pick a person that will be the liaison. So they'll have an engineer that will go to the different people to kind of try to get the locations.
The resident
The
engineer, is that who
resident
that is?
engineer.
Yeah.
And most likely, if we were to provide CDM with a list, that would be tremendously valuable. And then what they probably would do is they would probably call someone like Dan and say, oh, we're gonna be on your street.
Yep.
Can you do the robocall, and here's the content that needs to go in there. So I think having the information and building a good database of how to contact these people is a good idea in terms of that. I do wonder, if we get to a point where timing-wise, if CDM, and I am trying to get CDM, Dave Young, to come out and kind of do an update with the selectmen, so that will be sooner than later. I was a little bit concerned that we're still on the timeline that people have, in all the publication, we're still on that same timeline. So nothing is deviated, and so far, we don't have anything that's a showstopper with the regulators, which is good. But once we get to that point where we're ready to go out to bid, they will select somebody to CDM to have it be that resident inspection. And why not put, that contact information into this? So, put the name and the telephone number right on the literature, that you will be getting a call from, so-and-so, or potentially get a call,
Yeah.
and just know what it's in regards to.
Well, that wasn't really what was the background of this. This was more the idea of creating an information base for all of Phase Two's project. Not really for the first few streets to help out the resident engineer for CDM. I'd hate to see a delay pending on their construction schedule, which, you're right, they're certainly still within it, but they're at the outer edge of it rather than at the meat of it, you know, so. You know, maybe the project manager will be inclined to go in that direction and, you know, and if it's only a couple of streets, you know, the project manager or the resident engineer can easily drop something at their door, you know,
But that's what they generally do.
yeah, at their front
They'll
doors, you know.
go door to door.
So,
and
so
drop
I don't think I
posters.
want to tie up an unknown resident engineer with a printing project, you know, 3 months away personally, but to help out CDM.
Well, I think once you build a database,
Well,
you have either phone numbers, the
Right.
emails, whatever, you got it, you can do whatever you want with
Oh,
it at
yeah,
that point. So I think
exactly.
it's very valuable myself.
yeah,
and
no.
I'd get this going.
Because I
but-
think under this, though, I mean, where, I have been, you know, we sent out an RFP before on the outreach coordinator, we got nobody.
Right,
So I've been trying to I'm not a big fan of repeating the same mistake. So I have been in conversation with folks about the scope of work. I'm getting a fairly good amount of pushback on the scope of work, to be perfectly honest, that it's pretty all-comprehensive for the project manager, you know, the most recent iteration.
from whom?
Just from folks that I've had individual discussions with.
Okay.
And I've encouraged them to apply, but some folks are concerned that, in particular, I've talked to two, you know, they've said, well, we don't have a company already, so how am I gonna do this? So we're getting a little bit of pushback, and some of the suggestion, I did say I would bring this up tonight, is, you know, if it's 19 hours a week, we may have more luck just hiring somebody. So, you know, that's a little bit of the feedback. I think kind of where I'm leaning is we will put the ad out and the scope as the selectmen approved, but I am a little bit concerned that a couple of the people who I think would be good candidates are kind of hesitant because of the scope of work being so extensive. So I at least wanted to provide that feedback, and, you know, like I said, I probably will put it out as an RFP. But I think if we have somebody that's gonna be, that we wanna coordinate with the general public, we probably should have a database available for them to
So,
help in that coordination. So
Absolutely.
it does serve multiple purposes
now,
having the data.
who's gonna have this database? Dan?
Well, different people will have different forms of databases for different reasons. You know, right now Megan has one that's heavily loaded with the septic information.
Right.
You know, we don't need that. Dan's is heavily loaded with other things. You know, the project management team, when they come in, can take a combination of that and gear it more towards demographic information. But this information, upon its return, would certainly be shared with Megan, Dan, and anybody else in the town who wanted. It's not meant to be exclusively, you know, the committee's information. So there won't be one database, it would be too expansive. We don't need to know the septic number of every, you know, every single property and all those things, and, you know.
And by the way, at 650 properties, it's not that big a
Right,
database,
yeah.
quite frankly. So,
I like this concept.
I like the concept. I would still go back that I'm hesitant on that wastewater project information by phone.
Well, I'll be listening to any suggestions.
And I personally would actually rather see it contained within the town, so that email and phone information doesn't go beyond that. So I'd like to see that contained to the water department and Megan's department, but
I'm
not
sorry?
beyond.
You mean nobody else sees it, or?
Well, I don't want someone else to put it in their database that then gets hacked and, you know, on from there, so.
Well, through you, Madam Chair, I mean, to that point, we have received inquiries
Right.
from folks for, like, dog ownership information, and we have been, organizationally, tried to discourage, I think if people are giving us information because they want to be able to interact with us for water or sewer, you know, we do not sell, we do not
Yeah,
promote
right.
the sale of it, but we are a public institution. And I was surprised that we've gotten fairly aggressive people, you know, really telemarketers that want information from
Oh,
us.
sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
And
oh.
we have been trying to say no, because there are sensitive information in the census and things of that nature that is not a public record. So to that point, we do try to safeguard for folks that we don't share this with people unless, ordered to do so by public records.
And we are the town, we are special employees, so we're also the town,
Yes,
yeah.
but just to the point, we don't want people thinking, no, you're gonna sell this off.
No,
We don't engage in any of that.
Okay, so let me, all right, so Dan would have this database. All right, so the robocall, let's say it was going to be about a construction on a certain site, would, so somebody, either the town engineer or who's ever responsible for saying we're going to start on Street A, they would call Dan and let Dan know what was happening, and he would set up the robocall.
Yes.
Is that correct?
right.
Yes,
All right. All right, going back to the other thing, for information.
Mhm.
All right. This would also, this could be used if he wanted to pick up the phone and call and say
Yep.
whatever he might want to, all right? I like that idea. I just think I have to come up with another wording on that.
Instead of information?
Because when you read that, receive wastewater project information by phone. If I read that and I didn't want a robocall, I would assume that any information that was going out, they would pick up the phone and call me. They would call and let me know there's gonna be construction on my street, all right?
So what would you put?
So what I'm saying is, to me, if, I'd,
I mean, generally, robocalls are notices. That's where I went to that, because that's
Yeah.
what it's, you will be notified.
and that's fine for the robocall, that's not the one I've got the issue with.
It's the same phone number, so,
So, all right, you're missing my point. My point is, if somebody puts this one down and says yes, and says no to robo,
Yeah.
I see where you're going, yeah.
now what do? Are you going to
Gonna
pick
call.
up the phone and call them?
No.
But that's what this implies.
But well, it might imply it to you, it doesn't imply it to me, because, I mean, I've been dealing with robocalls for years,
But
we
if I
know,
say no to robo,
yeah, you're not gonna get a robocall.
okay, but now I'm saying yes, that I want to receive
I
information by
didn't,
phone.
A
it's
robo-
not
that's a
written,
personal
receive
call.
all information,
It doesn't say all down here either.
but we know
See,
what
I'm s- no,
robocalls
We
are.
know what we
I
have
don't-
in mind. I just have to, I think we need to come up with another,
I think if I
Phrase.
follow you, Sharon, and I see your point, that if somebody says receive project information electronically, no. Robocall, no. But yes, I want a phone call,
yes,
then what do we do?
now what do you do?
But see,
And
I don't
that's
read
gonna
it that,
happen.
I don't read it that way. For me to read it that way, I would have to say receive all wastewater information by phone.
I know.
And, that's, everybody's gonna have their own interpretation,
Just
No, I
change it
just- I
to
can see your point,
contact
that's all.
instead of receive a phone call. Your phone number contact is, robocall is separate.
That's not a bad idea, using something like just contact info or contact phone number, not to receive information.
So, but
Just a-
before, last meeting, everybody was worried about permission. That's why I spent time and did it this
But
way,
you are giving them permission. They are.
by saying contact info? Okay, I mean,
If I'm going to if I'm going to put a phone number down, and you're asking for contact, and I put the number down, I'm giving you,
So what's the word you use?
So-
what do you want?
I would say,
Contact phone number, just fill
what
it
I
in.
would do is-
Robocall, yes or no,
leave the
email,
email
yes or
where
no.
it is. Move the robocall up to second place, and then the third one be contact phone number. Just leave it at that. And you're not saying you're going to call the person with information or anything else. It's a contact number, strictly. It's probably going to be the same phone number, I'm assuming, but I think you would be less likely to have someone expect, because you can guarantee somebody's going to say, they never called me.
Well, that's gonna happen anyway. I mean, that always happens, so, you
Yeah.
know, you have to
I
be
mean,
ready
think
for
of the
that.
times you've gotten robocalls, your water will be off for 3 hours because, never a welcome call, but at least the robocall came in. As opposed to the personal call to your 3 people where they are saying, we are coming to put in the new meter, are you going to be home? Those are two different kinds of
Right.
calls.
Yes.
The robocall is the, y'all gotta know this, and the contact
The
phone
strict
number
contact.
is the one where somebody is specifically contacting you for,
For whatever.
for whatever.
It's not necessarily saying we're going to give you information, it's just.
So your language is best contact, I'm just trying to get the
Not be-
language.
Or, no, wait, just contact, not best, contact number.
Contact
Phone
number.
number.
And then do you want cell and home phone?
Yes.
Yes, because some aren't going to have a cell.
I hate to tell you this, but if you read this little ticket first.
I know. A lot of people won't, that's why I let
Yeah.
people go that way.
Wastewater contact methods and information.
That's why I let people
Yep.
do that,
Wastewater
because
support
that's what the
committee is
public
requesting
will do.
information from you in
Thank
order to
you.
facilitate communication as phase 2 project proceeds. For questions regarding
That's
the blah, blah,
exactly
blah.
why I let you
And
do
Please
that.
complete and return the enclosed postcard.
I know. But I knew that that's what most of the public will do. They won't read the insert anyway if they don't, so
They're gonna
that's
look at
why I
this.
let you guys fall into my trap. It was worth 5 envelopes.
So,
And to make it even more, for the people who are just noticing they're going to be sewered, and we know there'll be somebody, even if it's a new homeowner, you might want to put someplace that says additional information for the website, the specific link to the wastewater part on
Hey,
the.
you know, I'll put anything, I'm just
I'm
waiting
just,
for.
because we know, I mean, I've just met somebody in the supermarket who just bought a house, moved here from North Carolina, and I said, are you going to be sewered? And they said, what?
I replied to a number of people already where I've sent them the link. They said they just moved here.
Yes.
I don't know where they got my phone number, it doesn't matter, or the email, maybe off the site, and they've contacted me, and I've sent them a link, told them sometimes I call them and say, I'm
Okay.
sending you the link, and go on there and go to this, that, and the other thing. I bet I've had like 5 or 6 like that.
So what are we doing?
Yeah, so I'm not sure what we're doing. So it sounds like people are suggesting that number 2 becomes number 3, and that it be just written contact number with a line below that says cell and home phone, and no yes and no.
See what they fill out.
You know, one addition, my handwriting is horrendous, so if you put on there, please print clearly.
Oh,
That may
please.
get people to slow down
No,
and
it
type,
doesn't, it
write it up
doesn't.
a little bit better.
Just stop.
I just,
So, and then we would have permission to the money to send these out.
Well, I'm not even through my card yet.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
Dan said he had a certain amount of money to send these to in one of my conversations with him, so make sure we know.
I can be in touch with Dan, we'll
Yeah.
figure out a way to
Okay.
pay for it.
Thank you. Okay, so what about the other questions on the form? And what about the heading?
I have one.
Now, another question we could have put on would have been, do you want to be a liaison? But I think that's more for the project manager to figure out when they get in place and,
I think this is just strictly contact.
So
Yeah.
if they give us contact information, do we care whether they live here, they live in New York, they live anywhere, they're a seasonal resident? I don't think so. So why are we asking that question?
can I answer? Okay,
Of course you can answer.
thank you.
Like,
re-
go to the chair. Chair, can she answer?
Yes.
Okay.
The reason I think it's valuable information is when we don't hear from a group of people and when construction's going on. I just thought it would be more helpful. You know, if I knew a block of people was gonna be leaving in October, I would hustle to make sure that I got the information that I needed from those people while they were here. Whereas if I think they're year-round, I'm gonna put them on, you know, I might put them a little to the side burner. So that's, but we don't have to have it. It's out here for input.
No, actually, I think that's valid.
I have a key one. The wastewater, we might want to indicate that that means sewers, because there are going to be some people who get this and think it's their septic system. So, Phase 2 sewering project proceeds.
Well,
I'll add
I'm
the word
using this
sewer
one.
if you
yeah,
want
this
it.
says phased, I mean,
No, but you know, I mean, people are,
You know what's hard for us is we fought for so many years to keep the word sewer out of this project. And finally Larry and I gave up. You know,
I
it was
don't
always
agree with
supposed to be wastewater. We fought it for like 10 years, you know, and we just finally raised it. So you'll always see me go away from that word, but I'll put it in.
That's been the source of a lot of the confusion. People have read it as septic,
Yeah.
for better or for worse.
What if we
So-
said Phase 2 sewer project?
Project.
Yeah, all right. I don't like it, but I'll do it.
All right. Excuse me.
We care if they're part of a homeowners association.
Well, I thought that would be very helpful. That's why I asked, actually Larry, and you, did I send you an email? Yeah, I did, about homeowners associations, because if you identify the homeowners associations in Phase 2, all of a sudden you've got a database right there. You know, I mean, let's say there were, 7 or 8 homeowners associations. I don't know if there are, but, by getting in touch with that president, then you've got, but we don't have to have it.
I actually think it's helpful.
And I didn't bother putting down their contact information because we should be able to figure out, how to get in touch with an association.
Maybe that association person would want to be the neighborhood liaison.
Maybe.
So let me ask you, we're going to decide on this tonight, and then we're going to present it to the selectmen? Is that how it's going to work, Chris?
I think that's the way you've been doing it in the
Yeah.
past, so it
Right.
makes sense.
So I like the concept.
Yeah.
I like the changes.
All right, so we're leaving seasonal resident?
I think that's good information.
Yes,
So
I think
we'll-
it's critical.
So other than the change on the card to making the phone number one contact number, this is how this will go. So we're not entertaining the larger piece then?
I like to see it.
I like the little
Okay.
card.
Well, it does save $100 in postage on the
Madam Chair,
return,
I'd
so.
like to propose that we accept this card with number 1 being number 1, left the same, number 2 becoming number 3, number 3 becoming number 2, number 4 being remaining, and number 5 remaining, and with the change of contact number for number 3.
And please print clearly.
And please print clearly.
I honestly don't have the room. I'll wait for discussion.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Discussion,
in
yes.
favor?
So, when I work with a printer, I might be able to fit that in. But right now, I honestly don't unless I go to a lower font, and I hate tiny font. So could I hold your please print clearly in abeyance? Room
Well,
pending?
Whoever gets to type these in when they come in, and
Mm-hmm.
they can't read 20% of them.
I used to work for doctors, so I'm very,
Can't put it on here.
but
Yeah,
Yeah, you
hopefully,
can put it on the yellow, that's a good point.
hopefully their phone number will be on it, and I have permission to call them, so.
Really, the only thing they have that they're writing is their email address, and most people print that anyway. The rest is phone numbers.
No, no, the
It's
question
It's just a
is you
reminder
read
to
their
have people
printing,
go
that's
slow,
all.
that's all.
well, that and homeowners association, name of group, but
But you can put it on the yellow one, right? You have space on the yellow
I
one.
was going
Yes,
to.
right.
Okay. All right, and then you also want to do the.
I was going to handle both, or one individually.
One
or-
separately?
Yeah, the
Okay,
motion.
okay, motion?
I move we approve your proposed changed document for the contact card.
Now what's next?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, but didn't we already do that motion?
Yeah, she
No.
stepped in.
Well, a discussion, yeah, am I allowed
Just
discussion?
That's all.
Right.
But you didn't have to make a new motion, did you? We had a motion on the floor, she was
Right.
discussing, you open it for discussion, end
Oh,
the discussion,
Call for the vote.
and it didn't change
and you
anything?
take a vote, so you didn't change
Okay.
the motion.
Okay,
Okay,
You didn't change the
Okay.
second.
all right,
okay.
thank you.
Right? I mean, I thought we did something different. I
Okay.
thought you were going for this or
That's
something.
what
This
I
is
thought
next.
for a minute.
Okay, so then this one's next.
Okay, I want to mention another piece on this before we go into this. I was thinking of the, Chris, of the return of this actually going to the water department, because usually I would trace the returns because you can learn so much from them. And, you know, I was thinking with the volume of mail you get, I wouldn't mind picking those up, you know, but by the returns, I don't mean the people mailing them back. I mean the ones that are undeliverable. You know, you can learn a great deal of information from mail that comes back. So I would be happy
By
to
the way,
do
can they
that.
drop them in the box out here?
I don't see why
Could
not.
have people do it, yeah, and
Yeah.
then we could direct them down there.
Right,
But I think having it go to the water department's a good idea.
yeah, okay, that's what I'll do.
All right. All right.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the wastewater contact methods and information insert with the words wastewater changed to sewer project, right?
No,
I thought that's what you,
I thought we were sticking sewer after Phase 2 sewer project.
yes,
Leave wastewater alone.
leave wastewater alone.
I thought it was going to say, "The wastewater support committee is requesting information from you in order to facilitate communication as the Phase 2 sewer project
Project.
proceeds."
Because otherwise we become
Yeah.
the
Correct.
sewer
We don't want
support
that.
committee.
No,
Yeah. So is,
I'd like to
That's
amend
what I
my
meant.
motion.
okay,
Well, it wasn't seconded, so I mean,
okay, so you don't, oh.
You're just
all right.
restating the main.
I'll
Okay.
restate it. I would like to have it changed to the wastewater support committee is requesting information from you in order to facilitate communications as the Phase 2 sewer project proceeds.
second.
Well, I need
Discussion.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, so I also heard a request for Ann about directing them to our website, and I'm trying to see where that might fit without making it, you know, a jumbled message.
I don't think there's room for it, and I'd like to actually withdraw that, because I
Okay.
think it reduces it to our concept of only having the contact information
Right.
on it.
Yeah, I kind
Yeah.
of like, I
Yeah.
like that idea of just the
Okay.
contact information.
The only way I see it happening is if you do it on this sheet and you move
Yeah.
this email
Yeah.
over this way and you put and/or
Yeah.
our
Or-
website.
Yeah,
Or put it down here at the bottom. But I think
I think it's
Just
a
the
mixed
contact.
message, to tell you the
yes,
truth.
I do
you know.
too. I think this is strictly
Yeah.
contact. That's my take on it.
Okay, and obviously, I would be in touch with Dan and Megan to find out their preferred phone number and listing. You know, sometimes Megan likes her name, sometimes she likes health department, so, you know.
Okay.
So you have a motion that's
Do
been
we,
seconded,
do we
right?
have, we do, was it second?
Yeah, I believe it.
Yes, it was.
It had to be if it went to
Discussion.
discussion.
All in
All in
favor?
favor?
Well, is there
All
any,
in
wait, is there
favor?
any further discussion?
Okay, any further discussion?
Hearing none,
Hearing none.
we'll put it to a vote. All's in favor,
All in favor?
say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, thank you.
Good. All right.
Okay, so next, would be the
Thank you for
the
keeping
meth-
me honest.
the method. Next would be the method of going forward. So, what do you want, Chris? What's your preference? You want me to come before the Board of Selectmen? We don't want this to drag out.
Yeah, no, why don't we put it on for the, we already set the agenda for the next selectmen's meeting, with one after that, so March.
Do we have to wait that long? Is there another way?
Well, you know as well as I do, and the board can't take an action outside of the meeting, so.
Right, you're right.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I
Just
could
let
ship
me-
it around, but
So
you know,
this
it's
one-
You could
deliberation
send to
outside.
information, and see if they throw up on it, and then if they don't,
Yeah, no, that's all right, I'm just thinking.
Well, March actually gives Dan and Megan a lot of time to consider.
no
And
wait,
to
it's
work-
No, no, no,
January
it
now,
wouldn't be
don't get into
March.
March.
It
Not
would
March,
be
in
February.
Talking about February
February.
4th.
Oh,
February.
okay, he
Yeah.
said,
I
You know, you
know.
guys got me confused, because
I
your
know,
next
we went
meeting
through
date
that,
is
yeah.
March 5th.
Yeah, I know,
Okay.
I screwed that up.
All right, so you'll put me on the agenda for the
February 4th. I think
February
it is.
4th.
February 4th meeting.
February
All right.
4th, that's right, yeah.
Pardon me?
February 4th, that's the next meeting. I just had to think when the meeting
Okay.
was.
Yes.
But that doesn't preclude me from getting quotes and doing all my work.
Oh, no, that would be
Yeah,
great.
okay. All right, but as to money, you guys mentioned before, I mean, I always prefer wastewater to stay wastewater myself. I mean, I'd rather not take water department money. That's just me.
Oh, if Dan offered to do it. I don't mind doing it out of the, out of our resources.
Right, that 20 grand that CDM is working off the grant anyway for DHY. No?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, we did commit that to something else. It escapes me at the moment. We'll find the money.
Right, yeah.
We have the sewer account.
Well, I
too.
mean, maybe we can negotiate once I have firm quotes. How's that?
It's always better to have firm quotes.
That's
going.
right. Okay, so part 2 of this is that I might be looking for volunteers, because this is a labor-intensive project. So I can either pay a printer a high premium to put it all together, or, I'll be needing some help with putting stamps on cards, because you can't, there's no other way to have the postage paid on a small sample. To use a permit, you have to have, thousands of people, and for the 600 people, we can't do that. So stamps will actually have to go onto these cards, and the inserts and the other things, so,
Oh, may I help you stuff the envelope?
okay.
Yeah, I'll help you too.
All right, oh, boy.
I'm a pro with this, I can, they don't have a stamp machine, so you can just,
Pardon me?
the old stamp machines that you
We
could put
do
on
have a
the-
stamp machine. I don't know if they take the postcards, though.
We had one that did.
Don't worry about it. I want them to look nice, I mean, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that to come out that way.
Check out places like Accuprint and stuff like that too, for the really inexpensive.
Yeah,
You can get stuff like that for $10.
So you'll provide dinner?
yeah.
You're gonna feed the help?
All right, so are we finished with this, the contact?
All right, so you will definitely have me on for the February 4th agenda.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Neighborhood liaison is our next topic.
Who could that be?
Noreen?
Okay, so this is for Chris.
Oh.
So the idea, Chris, and I don't, if anybody needs a copy, I have them here. Yep, yep.
I have mine.
So, oh, sorry, yeah.
Thank you.
So, we've been having discussions about neighborhood liaisons since, a year ago, 13 months. So this was an idea to define them. And to tell you the truth, I don't think we'd be doing much more with it at this point, other than maybe putting a list on our, website. It seems like that would wait for the next round of people, so to speak. It's just kind of to, we have had these discussions to define it and put it aside. So this was, I did hear from a couple other people, thank you for the comments. And one was after I had sent out the draft, but I will let Ann speak up if she wants to voice her comment.
I didn't actually bring my direct comment,
I did.
so I want to stay consistent with what you said. Okay, what I suggested was adding a bullet that suggests that liaisons specifically collect and forward questions to the wastewater committee and to project managers. And the reason I suggested that is, first of all, it might feed into a punch list of questions to be answered, because I'm assuming some of these, as the project moves forward, some of the questions will be repeated, and thereby putting them on the website means that there'll be a pool. If they're general questions, there'll be a pool of resources, so that if others have the same question, let's say the next 10 streets over may have exactly the same question. And those questions would augment what we put in the handbook, and be able to replicate as a potential area-wide issue, or be flagged as something that's specific to a geography, so everybody in a certain neighborhood will have the same geographic issues, perhaps, or not. Some of this reflects the suggestion that the questions be forwarded to us. I've seen some of the complete email lists from some of the neighbors, And my biggest concern with the liaisons is the ones that I read through were propagating more incorrect information than correct information. So I was suggesting using us as the, if you will, the review to make sure that the information was accurate. And some of the confusion was, and inaccuracies were potentially serious in terms of people making decisions based on it. And I think that has many ramifications, from financial to other varied decisions. And so that's what I was suggesting, is that the liaisons use us really as a filtering mechanism.
So, because we had talked by email, I had said that I thought when I read your email that you were talking about things going directly to the project manager.
Or the project manager.
And
but-
I thought that was captured in the second bullet. So, I mean, language, I don't care about one way or the other, it's whatever you folks think, but,
It was more of a guidance to the liaison, so they didn't go off on their own or misunderstand something. And it was, a lot of the inaccuracies were based on misunderstanding
yeah.
something.
So maybe somebody would suggest some language.
Well, my preference is that as we get these liaisons established, whoever they are, however they come forward, we at some point, say there were 15 of them, I don't know. We have a meeting, we have liaisons come in, and we just talk about what liaisons do and what we expect of them and what they expect of us and how we're gonna communicate with each other and how it's gonna work, you know.
It just, I just had the insurance company came in and did an overview of our policies. They do that once a year.
Yeah.
And I just want to be a little bit careful in terms of this, because the town's insurance coverage is extended to volunteers. And I think what we want to do here is almost say, I like kind of your first bullet here, the neighborhood liaison is a resident volunteer who is willing to be a contact between the project manager and residents in the area. We don't, by calling a neighborhood liaison description, I don't know, I don't want to get into something where someone thinks, to the point, we get 15 people, and then one person has an agenda that is a little inconsistent with the town. So I think driving people to our site and just having it be, kind of really emphasize that this is wastewater neighborhood liaison, that if you want to communicate with the town, you may want to organize yourself, and here's a suggestion for how to do that.
See, this goes to my point when this came up before, when we tried to formalize this. It sounds like we're making a subcommittee. And my concern was exactly what you're getting at, that this now becomes like another subcommittee to the town. To me, this is something that we're putting out to the people. You know what? If you want to be a liaison in your neighborhood, you're certainly welcome to do that. You can come to us with questions. We can direct you to the website. I think formalizing this too much, we're going to run into trouble, possibly legally. And what are you going to do with someone then that does give wrong information or doesn't like it, or you get somebody that has their own way of communicating and we have issues? All right, I think we're going to run into
Because
problems.
maybe if you did helpful hint or something, just characterize it as that if you want to group together as a neighborhood, you're welcome to do that on your own. And the best way to coordinate with us is then.
That you can come to us and we can, walk you through the website or something. But I think this has to be less formal than what we're doing here, because I think we're going to run into trouble. That's just my personal opinion on that.
I think where I was going with my comment is just setting up a procedure for the liaisons, so that there was a communication procedure, so that they're not sitting there saying, what do I do? It's more a question of just.
See, but then we're directing them what to do, and you're saying filter questions through us. And as soon as you start, then you're making them responsible to us, and I think that's a mistake.
So what I'm hearing from you is that if I scrap the idea of liaison altogether?
No, No. What I would like to do is present, to the people out there. If there are people that would like to be a liaison for their neighborhood, and you select who you want to be, or if you even want one, if you want some help with the questions, or what you could provide to your neighbors, you could come to us and we can help you with it. I don't want it to be a formal committee that we say, you have to filter questions through us, or we're gonna tell you kinda how to do it. To me, that's another subcommittee. And to your point, which I wouldn't have thought of, but it almost is like, we're putting another committee together.
See, it's very likely in my mind that once the liaisons are identified, those are the folks that the consulting engineers are gonna go after initially and say, hey,
Yeah.
can I get your group together and can we have this yak? And by the way, we want nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
This group and the town doesn't either. That's up to them, that's private business.
Exactly.
So I think the cleaner you relieve this, the better off we are, quite frankly. If we get too specific, number one, people say, well, I don't wanna do that, because
And
it's
then
too
we're
complicated. Let's
responsible,
keep it
so to
simple. I think what we're trying to do is provide consistent and accurate as we know information, whether it be, the phase 2 booklet, whether it be some other document that we have or some help, we can give them a list on, from the Board of Health on who the sanitariums are, or
We can help
whatever.
them with whatever they need, but I
Yeah,
don't
but it
want
has
it
to
to
be
be
consistent.
something formal. I think we're gonna run into trouble.
So maybe we should just scrap this. It's just that we talked about it for a long time, and it seemed like we should take some action one way or the other. Maybe our action is to scrap it.
Well, I think maybe the action would be is maybe to, at our meetings, or periodically, at the Board of Selectmen meeting under,
Citizen speak or
or
open
public
forum.
comment, or
public
one of
comment.
those. Just say, this is just to remind people out there that if you're interested in being a liaison to your committee, or to your neighborhood, and you need some information, contact us
Okay.
and we can provide it to you.
See, I guess my problem is that people say, if you're interested in being this, then X, Y, and Z. But the problem is we still never defined it. So if you're interested in being this, well, what is this? And
It's
that's what.
whatever they want it to be. If we start to define that, that's like, to me, is putting together another committee and coming up with their charge. And I won't agree, I won't
Well,
vote
I'm
for that
happy
one.
to scrap it. It's just that from this committee, I heard people say, we haven't defined it. We don't know what we're talking about it. So I took it upon myself to define it.
And I think I
So-
had said before, I was a little uncomfortable with this, that
And-
it was like a subcommittee.
I think when we were first talking about the liaisons, we had a much more limited concept to begin with. We considered them people who knew their neighbors and might want to facilitate local neighborhood meetings,
That's it.
period.
It's that simple.
Uh,
If they need help with information, they can come to us. But
The people who knew who to call, the people who knew what committee to go to, and the people who could say, my neighborhood doesn't seem to understand it, they feel like they haven't had communication. That's essentially my concept of a neighborhood liaison in the first place, but specific to this project, and honestly, I think most people, when I looked at this list, I think a lot of people would walk away from being a liaison, whereas if they were doing not too much more than calling those meetings and sort of rounding up the people they have backyard barbecues with, that.
because I think there are some out there already that exist.
So, the first bullet covers it all.
Yes,
A neighborhood liaison is a resident volunteer who is willing to be a contact between the project manager and the residents in their area,
it.
period. All the other stuff goes away.
Well, I would go a little bit shallower than that maybe and say that if you kept bullets 1, 2, 3, and 4 and took out 4, 5, and 6, it would clean it up immensely.
And take out what, take out,
4,
Keep
5, and
bullets
6.
1, 2, and 3, and the last one.
Oops.
So take out the bullet says the liaison stays in contacts, any size, get rid of that. Each parcel might or might not have forget that. And play a role in neighborhood meetings,
I wouldn't agree
It's
to
up to
I
them.
wouldn't agree to the last one. that we may request liaisons to attend a wastewater support
You don't think
committee.
if we had important information to share with the people, that we might not call those liaison
Use the
folks
word
in?
invite instead of request.
okay.
That's different.
All right.
I guess I don't know what we're gonna do with this then, if we're afraid to identify what it is. I mean, what are we gonna do with this list? I mean,
I don't think we aren't, I guess the way I'm looking at it is that we aren't doing anything with this. This is up to the people. Somebody in your neighborhood, like you, would say, hey, you know, you call the groups, your neighbors
Right.
together and discuss things.
so what's the
and
point of refining it then if we're not gonna do anything with it, is my question.
When I say refine it, it would be something that would be said verbally, possibly
Right.
at the Board of Selectmen meeting. We can reiterate it at our meetings, you know.
I think if you wanted to if you put helpful hints for neighbors, and here's some suggestions, now you're not creating a liability,
But
you're
then what
just
are
saying.
you
that
gonna
people-
send it, so what are we gonna do with that
I
then?
even think that's too far. Hints is
Yeah.
implies.
Then we're providing, to me, it would be like, somebody come up and said, hey, you know what, I have a group together in our neighborhood. What information, or where can I go to get it?
So we're
And then
gonna
you
let,
tell them where to
we're
go.
gonna let we're gonna let Phase 2 identify who they want to show up and be
Exactly.
the liaison.
But isn't that the way you would want it in your neighborhood?
But require them
Depends.
to identify themselves as a liaison with some unspecific thing.
Right,
I
that's,
don't know.
I
That's
can't,
just,
I don't get it.
So we're
either.
saying, okay, if someone wants to show up and be a contact point, then we'll allow it. Or we'll use them or something.
As
We'll
long
get
as
their
they're a
phone number,
volunteer.
give them
Yeah.
a card to fill out.
But I don't think we can say that we will allow it, that it shouldn't be our decision.
Well, I'm saying if we say welcome and invite instead of allow, it's a very different thing.
Well, I mean, you can, this committee could say, we think that neighborhood liaisons might be a useful concept. And this is how we would see what
Yes,
a
I
liaison would
agree.
do. If you want to be one, come see us. I don't know.
Something very,
Doesn't that-
Very-
doesn't
Where
that
would
make
we
sense?
say that, Peter?
Innocuous.
Probably on a website, I don't know. I mean,
Right,
say
that's
it at
what I
meetings.
mean.
well, you could
Yeah.
also put that on a website. We could put that on our
Just put it
website.
on the website.
Yeah.
That's a good idea, put it on the website.
Put it on, instead of saying you're a seasonal
I have
resident,
no
you want,
room.
you
I have
want to
no
be a,
room.
you want to be a, want to amend your
No,
motion?
please print clearly is going in there.
Will you
You know what,
reconsider?
we could put it on the wastewater website, and we could put it on the general, website, that, if you're interested in being a neighborhood liaison,
Helpful.
Do what? Identify yourself?
no, and you have any questions, contact.
But the question is, what we talked about in the last meeting, what prompted this was Peter said then, well, the first question they're gonna have is, what is a liaison?
And who do I call?
You know, but
A
I mean,
liaison is whatever
it's
they
not
make it
important
to
to me, you know,
Well, it
A
could be,
liaison
it
is-
could be, excuse me, it could be, if we get everybody's contact information,
Right.
that when the project manager and whatever, the team, whatever's in place, they may just choose to
exactly.
send it out that way, recognizing people respond individually, and if some group shows up, like a neighborhood association or whatever, then maybe they all show up here or at the
Right.
project manager's door, whatever, and say, okay, I have these issues or concerns.
I like the ones that showed up and said, we're here, but, 5 people had to work, they couldn't come, we're
Yeah,
gonna pass
whatever,
on the
but-
information, and, yeah.
I thought this was our attempt to try and, I won't say formalize, but at least to recognize that we wanted to try and improve the flow of communication.
Right, I did too.
That's where we really started at the very beginning. I had a question for Val. Did they do anything like this in Chatham that you know of? I don't
I
think so.
am unaware of them doing this in Chatham.
But there's quite a few things we've done that Chatham didn't do, so we'll just add to that lengthy list. I know, I've heard from Chatham
Yeah,
people, and they
I've
say,
heard that.
we didn't get
That we are doing
handbooks,
a
we
lot
didn't
more."
get this, we
So-
didn't get that, so,
So can we just modify this and put it on the website and see what happens? I
Yeah.
mean,
So,
to invite is what,
okay, so, let's see.
so I sent that electronically to everybody, so the chair is the one who usually puts things on the website.
So we're talking, and we're gonna keep them the way they are, 1, 2, 3, and 7, except 7 is invite.
right,
Is that?
Yep.
All right. All right, so somebody
that's
wanna,
my motion.
That's your
Thank
motion.
you.
My
Oh, can I
motion
make
is-
a motion?
One question, excuse me, one question
Yeah.
first. But Ann had made statements about two, and they haven't been answered, so whatever.
I like it the way it is myself. Because otherwise I'm gonna be getting into too much detail.
I think that's close enough.
So my motion is,
Wait, one quick one. We say here to the project manager, we don't have one.
well, assume you will have, I mean.
We will have one
Right.
soon.
All right,
should be
all right.
something.
Okay, go ahead.
So the motion would be to adopt the neighborhood liaison description to include bullet items as presented, 1, 2, 3, and 7, with 7 having the word request changed to invite, and that the chairman, post haste, get this posted on the wastewater website.
I second it.
Discussion,
Any further discussion?
yes.
Okay.
All right, so the title, somebody made a good point. I mean, we certainly should at least say wastewater neighborhood liaison discussion. I'm just trying to narrow this down now. Maybe there's a better title that can allay some of the fears of some of the people here.
Maybe get rid of the word description, just wastewater neighborhood liaison?
But that's not really going to the heart of what I'm saying. Yeah, we certainly could do that, but that
By the way,
doesn't,
It's on the wastewater website, so why would we have it
well, I
on
know,
wastewater
yeah.
thing? So-
I don't know, I keep trying to think of the word stakeholder rather than liaison, but unfortunately, all 650 are stakeholders, so you can't really do that. I was trying to get more of a volunteer.
How about neighborhood liaison opportunity?
We actually
How
say
about
resident,
this?
we say
Excuse me,
resident
how-
volunteer.
Pardon me?
We say resident volunteer.
In the first thing, I'm talking about the heading.
Oh,
You know, you guys have just proved to me, you don't read inserts, you don't read headings, so, I mean, somebody has to. How about wastewater, how about neighborhood liaison volunteer?
Yes.
okay.
And that's,
And I
my
don't care-
motion does include that, by the way. Change the word description to volunteer,
And did we add wastewater to that? I missed it.
I don't know, I don't know.
because it's on the wastewater site.
All right, neighborhood liaison volunteer, okay,
And we drop in description, right?
yes.
All right.
All right, so do you have
That
to
was the
do that?
motion.
You
Okay.
amended it?
Any,
He amended it, I seconded it.
okay,
Call for a
all in
vote.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Who was
All
the
right.
second on that? Peter made the motion.
I
You were the second?
back and forth.
Now, since it is getting late, let me start in with this tracking spreadsheet, and I'm gonna give you an overview of where I started with this 2 years ago, which was enormous. And I have to say that when I first started this, I was kinda new, and it was really, included way too much information. Oh, you have one, okay. Since then, Peter and I got together and we went through this, and we did eliminated quite a bit, figuring that whoever would be working with this also has the certificate that you could go back to if you needed clarification. As I was going through this, there's a couple of things, and I don't think we can do this tonight, we can maybe do this at the next meeting. There's a couple of things, and Chris, you can easily comment on this. This responsible party, all right? I don't know, you know, you can provide some input on that, and so can the rest of us. And I'd like it to
Did you
be,
get this from, I know Charlene and I went through your original draft, and I know we populated that.
Yep.
right,
You took that from what,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
worked
Right,
with that
and then-
document as well, yeah.
yeah, and I did modify some of this, because sometimes there were 5 or 6 people. What we're trying to put there is not 5 or 6 people that are going to participate in that, but
It's like, who's responsible?
who's
Right,
going to be
gotcha.
responsible for it?
Yeah. Could you give us just one example, just to get us on our way to first plate? Just, how do I read this? GF 9BA,
all right,
just give me
all right.
one.
Okay, all right, now, in that task, or well, you don't have this with you, all right. If you go to the certificate, all right,
Yep,
and you go to that, and you, there's the beginning, and you go to page, let's start out with, well, it actually starts on page 2. You'll see GF1,
Right.
and it's general. You'll have GF2, that has things. And it goes on, general, and then they go into, what are some of the other
Gotcha.
ones? All right,
And some of them come out of the comprehensive wastewater management plan,
right.
the WPS stuff when you get into that.
So hopefully, and maybe in moving some of this around, some of it isn't exact, but if you would look at GF9BA.
Yeah, I'm there.
Under public engagement.
Yep.
There should be something, and I'm not even, GF,
It's on page 6 at the bottom of the decision.
all right, so where it says create a technical review panel, requirement of decision include local, regional, and state representation. It is recommended to be a requirement for any state permit.
And that came out, I'm not seeing it right
Well,
here.
I didn't, here, look at this big paragraph right here.
What page is it?
6. And it's at the big one, it says, in order to maintain the 208 plan update consistency. Midway through that, creation of a technical review panel that includes local, regional,
We're going too fast. Creation is where?
About the sixth line
your
down.
creation of,
Okay.
all right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So,
what we were trying to do is something that requires an action by somebody that's trackable.
okay, so that's in B. I know I'm,
Where are
you know, crazy stickler, but I mean, that's in B. It's not in BA. I'm just trying to find
All right,
the
all right,
key
and you know what,
behind
I'll
this.
tell you what, we can eliminate, and that was something that Charlene put in. And my thought is, I think that confuses things because it isn't an A. There isn't an A.
Okay,
So we can
right.
get rid of that. It's GF9B,
Yeah,
all right? So, and that would be the same thing under, now sometimes I think they, here, if you look at GF9
which one
on
are we on?
page 5. Oh, all right, that's plain GF9. All right, where do I get to a B? There are some,
Yeah, I mean, the next one is the GF9B and then the
And the
C,
C.
so, which is on page 7.
yes.
Coordination
So
of
sometimes
shared
they
watershed.
do have those little letters.
Okay,
Now, you know, if you guys want to, you know, weed through that, I would appreciate it, and I need to go back over that. But the object of doing that was that if you read that and you thought, oh, I'm not really sure what that means, you had some idea of where to go back and look at it
right.
in the
Okay.
decision itself.
All right, I'm just trying to, as I say, get the flow.
Yeah.
So, all right, forget about the little A's for the moment. Still on this first one to just get the key here.
Mm-hmm.
So since I can't read all this while we sit here, how did you pick up WSC and BOS as the responsible parties from that?
I didn't. That was something that when Charlene and I first did this, and I said, this goes back to 2 years ago.
Okay,
All right?
all
And we
right.
were trying to come up with, and this responsible party needs to be revised.
Okay, all right. I gotcha.
That's something that, I don't know who would be responsible for this, picking up on who would be the local and state person on that TRP. I know in the back, if you go back in the decision to page, it's the last one, it says, and it's kind of an exhibit, it's Exhibit A, a technical review committee, TRC, will be established to review the process of the CWMP recommended program, and it goes on and on, all right? They do say it could be the, what do we say in here? Somewhere here, implementation process. There was somewhere,
Well, that's all right. I was just trying to find the flow of the key. I wasn't really
Right.
trying to beat that one specific one up
so
that
I
much.
think,
All right,
you know,
you answered
until
my
the next
question.
time, you know, go through this along with this decision and see what you think, did we miss something you feel should be in there? Is there things in there you think should come out?
Now, does this relate to the state decision?
Yes, it does. In other words, this is the Cape Cod Commission, and if you look at the one from the state, which is a certificate, it's basically saying the same
Okay.
thing in slightly different
So my
wording.
question is,
This
and-
one I thought was easier.
okay, but is the do any of these keys refer to the state decision? In other words, you've got like GFBC, GFBF. Does any of this refer to this? I'm just trying to
Oh, to
find
the
out
other one, all right.
how it flows.
You know what, I
Yeah.
honestly don't know, because what I used was this. And I don't think they were
Okay.
using the same,
So all
No.
I need to use is this then?
yes,
That's all I'm
yes.
trying to
And this, yes, they
It's
don't
been
do
too long
that
ago
here.
that I looked at it, so I don't remember.
No, they don't use those letters.
All right, so for the purposes of the project you're giving out, we can concentrate just on the Cape Cod
Cor-
Commission one?
correct.
For the moment,
Right.
anyway, okay,
And they basically say the same thing.
all right.
It's just, this was, I thought, easier for outline form in here. But again, I wasn't sure who to make a responsible party or person on this.
All right, I really wasn't asking about the first
Yeah.
one, who it was, I
Yeah,
was just
but-
asking
But
about
I'm
the.
saying in all of those need
Yeah.
to be relooked at
Right,
with that.
okay.
Did someone task us to do this, or are we taking this on ourselves?
All right, it started with me just doing it because I didn't know enough about the project at the time. And I started to read it, and then I realized, oh, there's things in there that are deliverables that need to be done. So I started putting it together. And the first one I did basically included statements that they made, like, this is, the decision is, you have to make sure you're doing the 208 update plan and be consistent with that in order for this to stay valid. That doesn't have to be in there in different places, because they start in the beginning, then it comes under something else, and then it's under the conclusion. So we eliminated some of these wordy things. We were looking for things that were actual deliverables.
Okay.
Here, if you go on,
Well, the reason for doing this,
Right,
quite
that's-
frankly, if you go to the last page of this, and you look at the third item down, which is C583, now whether this is true or not, I don't know, but it says, any proposed above-ground structures associated with sewer construction such as lift stations, which would be a pump station, right? Shall be submitted to the Cape Cod Commission for review and approval. Are we doing that? Have we done it?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
the way things kind of work, I mean, for better or for worse, it has been submitted to DEP. So DEP is in the process of reviewing it, including the pump stations. The Cape Cod Commission has been taking the lead, or their lead, from DEP. So I met with Dave Young just the other day, and I said, I know we submitted it to DEP, let's make sure we send a courtesy copy to Cape Cod Commission, so that way they're on the same page. So, in answer to the question, we are in the process of sending it formally to the commission. It has been, and has been under review for a period of time now with DEP.
so probably with something like that, it should have gone maybe to both at the same time? Cape Cod and DEP?
Like I said, the Cape Cod Commission has really been following the lead of the state DEP, so I don't think it's that substantial that we send
Just
it
to make
after
sure
the
you don't
fact.
ignore them, so they
Yeah.
come down and
That's
say,
right.
hey, we're supposed to review this, and
Yeah.
you didn't let us do it. Just like they're supposed to issue some certificate of compliance associated with phase two, right? I mean, I read that, it's in here someplace. That's why I said the other night, do we have a contact person at the Cape Cod Commission as our guy or gal that's, working with us on these
Because
things?
they tell you to
Oh,
form
yeah.
that TRP committee, which includes somebody from the state and somebody from the commission.
Excuse me. I think what Val was more asking, but maybe not, was, is this in our charge? And I
Yes,
can't
because-
remember off
yes.
the top of my head, I believe it is. But
Yes, they
is
put
it?
that in the charge for the wastewater committee, that we're supposed to be monitoring the spreadsheet.
Okay.
All right. And
'Cause
by
it
the way,
actually
it's in the project management thing to take this over, quite frankly.
Right.
And then, the project manager would take that
It
over.
actually, my phone's acting up, so I can't look it up, but it says monitor the spreadsheet, I don't remember that. Yeah, okay.
But we really don't have any teeth, other we can point it out.
No, so the object was to monitor it, and like I said, it would be something to say, hey, Chris, is this done? Once the project manager is there, they will be able to,
They'll assume all that.
yeah,
Okay.
the deliverables and the status, it's in process or whatever.
So, how
And the,
much,
no, wait,
Oh,
the
sorry.
reason that
Thought
I
you were
did
done.
this is because this is a 40-year project. Some of us are not gonna be here. And
Probably
at some,
all.
some might. You might. If at some point, the commission or the state comes back, if somebody has a complaint and they say, did you do this? Let's say somebody, I don't know, got into a wetlands or something.
right,
All right, because there's stipulations in here about wetlands, all right? They come back and say, hey, did somebody do this? And you don't have any record of that. At least where I came from, if there's no record, it's not done.
Right.
that's great.
So
and we-
that was my purpose for doing this, and eventually gets turned over to,
Yeah, we were gonna send it out to, the organization and make sure people are aware of what the elements are that we need to comply with. Ultimately, I think it will go to Dan Pelletier, we'll do the lion's share of it in coordination with CDM.
Okay, so, how much of this realistically, our next meeting is in 12 days?
Yeah.
How much of this would you like us to go through?
as,
Well, I mean, is your intention that we actually beat this up?
yeah,
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, if I just
Yeah.
speak on this, I didn't bring all my copies, but when I first showed up to help her go through all this stuff, we were throwing out pages like crazy. I mean, this thing used to be
Oh, I
much
know.
I know,
larger.
it was monstrous.
I know, and I,
And at this point in time, my suggestion would be, do some wordsmithing on that, because some of these things don't, it's kind of hard to figure out what you really
Right.
want. So some editing of the words, and things that don't matter, if they don't matter, let's get them out of here.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I know there's some hangover stuff that we, like, install sewers in Sacotucket watershed. Well, okay, well, we know we're gonna do that, well,
Yeah.
that doesn't belong there. Bucks Pond Restaurant, and there's just stuff in
Yeah.
here,
okay.
we need to get rid of.
And
But
I-
also, when you're looking at this, make sure you read this.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so I applaud thoroughness. I think that might be a lot of work in 12 days.
Yes.
With people, well, then how much
This is
would you?
gonna go on, this is gonna go on. I mean,
Right, so wouldn't it be better to chop it up and say, okay, at our next meeting, we're gonna have a serious, thorough discussion about parts A, B, and C?
My suggestion is just to
Okay.
get, because I think we have to get to what I would call a clean copy, and
Right.
this is not there yet.
Yeah.
Okay,
My suggestion would be if you have editorial comments, feed them back to the chair. If she can then flip it into a revised one of these things, maybe not next meeting, but whatever. And at some point in time, we can say, okay, Bernie, why don't you take page one and work it over?
right, right.
And why don't you take page two and work it over?
Yeah.
And, people come back and we work through it that way.
Okay,
I mean, I think this thing's gonna take until,
right,
It's gonna take,
May to
it's
get
gonna,
done.
it's gonna
Yeah,
take
and
a little while.
the one thing just to keep in mind is this is gonna change.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yep.
Because as DHY, if
Yeah.
DHY comes online, a lot of this is gonna.
that's
Yep,
gonna change.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
that's that was, I think there was something in here, like when that changes, then we have to modify
that's
the
the end.
CMP.
An
That's the
amendment.
end, the adaptive management plan, so.
all right, so you want us to go through the whole thing by next meeting? I'm just trying to find out what to do.
I'm not hearing the whole thing. I'm
No?
hearing that we're gonna be working on this for an
Yeah,
extended
okay.
period of time.
Yeah, I guess my thing would be is get through what you can.
All right,
It's
Because-
really a first pass,
Yeah.
where each of
Get
us
through
will
what you
find
can.
things and then
I mean,
we'll
If you see
I've got
consolidate.
people that
things that
work.
need to get taken out, obviously, that's the easy one, put a
Yeah.
line through it.
gotcha.
Scan
then
it
we
and
can-
send
and
it to
then-
the chairman, let her take it out of there.
Yeah, and then we can discuss that, maybe somebody thinks, oh, it needs to be in there. I kinda tend to like to hold on to things, as Peter knows.
I like the list of ponds.
So yeah, do what you can, and we'll put this on the agenda for probably the next couple of meetings, and we get through what we can.
Or just update what progress people
Yeah,
are making.
yeah, update.
Do you think there's any benefit to referencing the page number on this, as opposed, in addition to the GF9?
Boy, am I for that.
What do you mean, referencing
That's
a page number?
interesting. In
Well-
other words, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Well, I mean, you were having difficulty
Flipping,
finding,
right,
you know,
yeah.
which page it was on, for that particular,
Oh, you mean, a page number for the,
Reference,
where it is on the
reference,
certificate.
Yeah, something to think about.
That way, okay, I know it's on page 7. Oh, okay, there it is, boom, as opposed to torturing yourself.
And then
Well,
write,
could,
please
what do you,
print
instead of
clearly.
making another, instead of making another,
Column?
column, what if I stick it in this corner, under
Yeah.
task?
Do it,
Do it. That
Like
works.
right here, for each one.
PG-5.
How come yours looks so much different than mine?
Because we've checked the sides down, so it looks different.
Yeah, ours is,
That's
There's certain
missing.
information we didn't want you to see.
For whatever reason, you
So we
two
knew you'd comment on it.
couldn't get
no,
get
I
it to
think it
print.
was Val too. Val took my copy, I think.
I printed yours.
Yeah, no, they're all
But
on
you had, but
mine.
you were able to print, right?
Yeah, I have found
Yeah.
it on
Mine.
the large Reader's Digest version, big, large print.
Can I see yours?
No.
Oh, that one's, no, this one's
No,
mine.
he's got mine too.
Oh,
So it's only you two that are the oddballs here.
And so I would recommend, I would recommend, Madam Chair, that as you get updates, and you get them ready to present to us, you send it to Val so he can print them out big time for us,
all right.
so we have
Does
nice
that
big
work?
sheets.
Not a problem.
All right,
I can help.
that'll work.
Perfect.
All paper all the time, yeah.
That's great, isn't it?
Okay.
All right,
Oh, I don't,
You're all set with me, I might depart. Do you
You
have the
can
key
have-
for the back door, you want me to lock it?
no,
or
oh,
you're
the back, what's the back door?
the one you went
These
out.
ones, the ones you
Oh,
went
that's,
out.
you
We
consider that
do
the
not
back.
have a key.
I have a key.
You have a key.
I have a key.
She has a key now.
Just want to make
Do
sure.
have a key.
We'll probably be right behind you. for
Yeah, I
that.
know.
Chris,
Good night,
Good
thank
night.
you.
Okay.
I give up.
All right, the other thing is there is, on the next meeting date is February 5th at 8:30 a.m.
It's already March 5th, now how do I change that?
Okay. So let's, let's just get rid of the March 5th for now and go with February 5th, 8:30 a.m.
Thinking tax cycle and
February
hoping that they
5th,
give us all an
8:30
extension.
Actually, you know what, quite frankly, with February having 28 days, right, this year, March 5th will be a Tuesday, right, so.
Yes, it will.
Yes, that's what happened.
There you
I
go.
flipped
See?
too far.
There you
I
go.
flipped too
Yeah.
far. I was
We're good, don't worry about it, we're teasing you. It's-
All right, so, all right,
We good?
all right, is that it?
No,
Motion?
Oh, what's up?
okay. So, it just seems like we're, turning a corner a little bit, so our next meeting is February 5th, but I didn't know what topics you might have.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's the chair's
that's good.
discretion.
That's fine by me.
okay. Well, does anybody have anything they definitely want on?
Well, we need to make a
This.
point that we're going to review
Yes. The
the
spreadsheet.
spreadsheet. Right.
Was there something you definitely want on? Like, do you
No.
want to go back over the card, or?
No, because it'll be before the Board of Selectmen the night before, so there's no,
Somebody give us a report,
right, there's no reason to go back over it.
All right.
and we can plan on how we're gonna get it produced and stamped.
Oh, all right. Because yeah, all right. Yeah, well, they will be meeting the day before us.
That's all right,
Okay.
it's good.
That's okay.
Yeah, all right.
Can-
Sooner the better. I would have been happy to do Monday.
If possible, it'd be wonderful to get Dave Young here, somebody tell us what's really going on with the Phase 2 design and when they're going out with the bids, and, I heard Chris say that
Right.
they're sort of on track, but I don't know what that means.
Maybe
We
an
haven't had
updated
him
schedule.
in since,
Huh?
Updated schedule.
Something, I mean,
Yeah.
was
Just
it
put
only
a
once
generic-
last year that we had Dave Young? Or was it twice? It was not
He's-
more than twice,
He's been in a couple times at the Board of Selectmen meeting.
but I'm talking about us,
Oh, us.
yeah.
Wow, I don't remember the last time.
Almost.
At least once I remember. I don't know if we had him even twice last year.
if
to
we
tell
just
you
had
the
a written
truth.
report that says
like
our
a year plus
expectation
ago.
now is that we're gonna have the design bid package ready to go on, pick a date, and we're going out, and, I assume they're still doing it in 2 pieces, right?
That's, as far as I
Bid
know,
1 and
that's
bid
still.
2, or whatever.
Yeah.
Contracts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but, so I would guess to get him in, it would have to go through Chris. I don't know who else would.
I think if we put update on the agenda, then he may fall under that, and then we have time to see.
Well, I prefer to have his name if he was gonna be
Yeah,
there.
that would have to be arranged through
Yeah,
Chris. We can't call him up and ask him to be here.
Why don't you
I
s-
understand that, but Ann was suggesting that we just put the word update, and he could fall
Oh.
into that, and,
I was looking more as a placeholder. I agree we
Right.
should have his name there, but
Well, okay, so it could be an update from Dave Young, it could be an update from Chris,
on Dave.
telling us this is the
Yep.
schedule that
right.
Dave Young is on, CDM Smith is on these days.
Well, I guess we could send him an email of what we would like the update on.
I'm working on it right now, so just,
Pardon?
I'm working on it right now.
Ah,
To get the update or get Dave Young here?
Is it possible to get an updated schedule from you prior to our next meeting?
There you go.
and let him know with what?
Know the date of the meeting and the time.
Prior to our next, I'm gonna say this, wastewater.
But wouldn't that mean he would just send in a schedule, or
That's fine.
do we want him to show up, or do we just want a piece of paper? I'm not sure what you want.
I may be seeing him next week.
But I guess that has to go through Chris Clark, because I guess if he comes in here to do this, that he gets paid for that.
Yeah,
For providing an updated schedule?
he
If
was before.
If he comes to a meeting, he gets.
No,
got-
but if we got an updated schedule, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, oh,
What
all
I'm
right,
suggesting is I may be in a meeting with him next week,
okay.
and if I ask him to bring a piece of paper with an updated schedule, I may
Right.
be able to present it to him, if he's willing to do that. I may be able to present it to the committee.
But like I said, if we ask him to come to the committee,
It's
I
pretty
see him
simple.
enough, I don't need to see him.
It's pretty simple, we want the design status.
yeah,
We want, when the bid packages will be ready for release, they are, requests for proposals, when they expect to have bids back and make the awards and start construction.
I'll ask the question, he can
Sure.
tell me to pound sand or what, you know?
all right.
The other thing is, maybe by our next meeting, maybe the selectmen will have some feedback for us on where the information center will be. I don't know. I mean,
It's been pretty hard to get that.
they were taking fast and furious notes the other night, but, I mean, there's only a couple options. I mean,
Yeah.
one is the old selectman's office in there, which I don't think is so great, and the other is the first floor of Albert House. I mean,
I don't know if Val and Ann saw the Board of Selectmen's meeting, but Peter gave a fabulous monthly update. He really covered a ton of material.
When was this?
Monday
Monday.
night,
This past Monday?
yeah.
Monday, but I was up after the homeless person, so,
Yeah.
it was a lot. The beginning of the meeting was a little bit odd, a little strange.
But it was unfortunate, I will say, because it was a jam-packed meeting,
Yeah.
and Peter posed a great many areas for discussion, and unfortunately, the Board of Selectmen, moved on rather than drilling into
Or
those
even asking
topics,
any
so.
question, yeah.
But at least they were mentioned.
Madam Chair, may I make a motion to get out of here? Adjourn.
I second it.
Any
That's
discussion?
it.
No,
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
who wants to stay?